Hello, thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of our team. I'm Ruth Williams. I'm the Interstitial Lung Disease Clinical Lead and a respiratory consultant at Princess of Wales. And this is very much a team work, and I've been the unfortunate one that's been asked to present. So our project was an innovative approach to ILD management, right people at right time. And so a little bit of a background what interstitial lung disease is. It's a diverse group of conditions affecting your lungs that may be progressive and in some cases, unfortunately, fatal. It's important to note that a number of patients can remain stable and well for a number of years. But timely access to specialist care, diagnostics and appropriate support during the course of the illness is crucial. One particular cohort, our idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis or IPF group, it's an incurable and progressive lung condition, and the current mean survival is between 2.5 and 3.5 years following diagnosis. So that's on par with a number of solid cancers, and that again reiterates the importance of timely management and care. So I started in Princess of Wales in beginning of 2019, and this was the old system, how patients became under our care. They were referred to from the GP with suspected ILD. They often faced a 26-week wait as a new patient. They were then seen in clinic and investigations requested at that time. And then there were follow-up appointments, then starting of treatment or referral onto a specialist MDT, and then follow-up at clinical appointments. And this had quite a variable wait and often quite a protracted wait for patients along this route. So there are a number of failings we identified at this old system. There's a very long wait to first appointments, particularly if you consider a number of these, their prognosis is pretty poor. They had a prolonged route to diagnosis. They were having repeated outpatient appointments. I inherited a large FUNB or follow-up not booked list, which meant that I had very little control over patient pathways. And there was also some safety concerns being raised about our disease-modifying drugs, which are quite toxic, and there wasn't really good controls in monitoring these in place. And we'd started to use really quite expensive antifibrotic drugs for our IPF control, and they weren't having the MDT prescription as NICE have laid out. So we needed to change. And here we look at the prudent healthcare principles, which obviously underpin a lot of the work Bevan does, but also the Healthier Wales policy. And as a team, we felt that actually, no, our idea how we wanted to change the system was representative in all of these, really. So we generated a new system. Here, patients are referred to us and we triage them now as urgent. And we preload their investigations. So they have their lung function, pulmonary function tests, and their HRCT requested at the time of triage. Then they come and see me, and I'm by this time able to have a provisional diagnosis to be made. And then depending on where we are, we either discuss them locally or within our regional ILD MDT. And then here's a number of changes as well. Rather than traditional consultant-only clinic model, we have now got a CNS or clinical nurse specialist-led follow-up, a physiology-led follow-up for patients with stable disease, but they still need monitoring. And those that are being commenced on medications can now see our pharmacist in a drug monitoring clinic. And all these patients, should they require it, should they deteriorate or have urgent clinical needs, then I'm able to now fit them into hot slot consultant reviews within 2 weeks. So when we designed our Bevan project, we anticipated a number of patient-centred outcomes, and I've listed a number of them here, but I'll pick on a couple. We wanted to be able to offer high-quality, sustainable healthcare for patients with ILD. We wanted to improve the patient experience and streamline the patient pathway. And we also wanted to look at improving the general well-being of our patients through lifestyle changes and other smoking cessation nutritional needs, such as those. We also identified a number of service improvement outcomes. Clearly here we wanted to reduce consultant follow-up waits. We wanted to make some cost savings through better communication with our patients on their medicines management and compliance. Even pre-COVID, we were looking at making cost savings for developing virtual or telephone model clinical models, which I appreciate now has become a bit more of the norm. And we wanted to look at trying to reduce repeated hospital attendances for our patients. So what were the challenges we encountered? Well, The first one, which we identified at the time of application to the Bevan Exemplar project, was finance, and this was for our drug monitoring service. Unfortunately, this was a hurdle that was never fully overcome, and it really only was through the goodwill of our pharmacy team at Princess of Wales, who allowed Jo, our pharmacist, to have 3 months of working with us, developing her clinics and then undertaking them, that we were able to achieve any data from this arm at all. Then we had a TB outbreak at Park Prison. Now, our interstitial lung disease nurse, Nat, is also the TB nurse, and unfortunately, this huge outbreak required a lot of her skills to be transferred that way, and that did mean that our other arms of Bevan, for example, looking at advanced care planning for our patients and education into primary care and palliative care, had to take a bit of a back seat. And then here we have our friendly little coronavirus. I don't think there's much to say about doing a respiratory project amongst a respiratory pandemic, but I think my 2020 and now 2021 has been pretty much absorbed with all things COVID. Our physiologists have been redeployed to work on the COVID wards. Our nurse has been redeployed to work on COVID wards, and our pharmacy department have been incredibly stretched. So I think COVID has had a monumental effect on us, unfortunately. But despite that, and despite our challenges, we have managed to achieve some good outcomes. The time to first appointment and diagnosis was significantly reduced from January 2019, when I started making some of these changes, and this is our IPF cohort data. So these are the patients with the poorer prognosis. So we've managed to reduce the median time for referral to outpatient from about 119 days to 67 days, and the median time of referral to diagnosis from 247 to 90. Now again, this is the cohort where their life expectancy is reduced, therefore diagnosis, and then now we have potential drugs that can help slow the progression. That's why it's so crucial that we get these patients under our care, diagnosed and under appropriate management. One of our main arms of our Bevan project was this pharmacy-led drug monitoring service, the only one in Wales at the time of development. Unfortunately, they were only really operational over a 2-month period because of the challenges I've discussed. But in that period, Jo, our pharmacist, did look at 29 patients. We had 100% of these patients had their lifestyle factors, compliance and side effects discussed. 97% had their medicines reconciled, and interventions were made in 43%. And as well as good experience outcomes, I think it's important that this service also ensures safety for our cohort, as a number of them are on quite toxic therapies. Brief overview of the interventions that Jo did undertake. We were able, in the general medicine, so this is not your specialist respiratory medications, these are the other medicines that people might be on. She was able to deprescribe in 4, make amendments in 3, and start in 2. And then looking at the respiratory drugs, Jo initiated them in 5, made some titrations in 6, and actually stopped 1. From the outset, and again harnessing these prudent healthcare principles, we wanted to ensure that patient-reported outcomes and feedback were really integral to how we were developing the service. And we did receive really good patient feedback here. And our pharmacy-led service was well received by patients, and we were able to demonstrate that this design is acceptable to patients. And that's key, as we want to ensure they've got confidence in us going forward. The other arm of our Bevan project was a physiology-led service. Now, a number of our patients may remain stable for years, but they do require regular lung function testing and a clinical review. Now, our specialist physiologists have been skilled to be able to provide a clinical review alongside their breathing tests. So of our 2019 ILD cohort, 40% we identified as being eligible for this particular service, and they then received a 6-monthly lung function and clinical review at the same time. This reduced their outpatient burden by 50%, but also really importantly ensured that their lung functions reflected their clinical condition, as sometimes the lung functions previously had happened several months before you saw a patient in clinic. So again, we sent patient feedback surveys out. This was a bit delayed and it didn't happen until the last few months. And I think understandably, COVID has had a huge impact on this service due to redeployments and the new infection control procedures that were put in place. But despite this, the majority of the feedback we received was really positive. I think a number of our patients had been under consultant follow-up, routine consultant follow-up for 5 to 10 years, and they are still adjusting to this change in approach. However, the majority of our new patients are really happy. So we asked a number of questions, and again, this is just a bit of a snapshot really, but I think they felt that the care they received at the time of their clinic appointment was very good by the vast majority. We assumed that reducing a patient's number of outpatient appointments would be beneficial to them. Now, I'm not sure if this is an effect of COVID and lockdown and the fact that any excuse to leave your house is a good thing, because all these questions were in recent times. But actually, I think, as you can see here, a number were uncertain whether having fewer hospital appointments would improve the experience, and quite a lot thought it wouldn't. So I wonder if that's a bit of a lockdown effect, to be honest. And again, it's a bit split between them where they feel the need to see a doctor. But on speaking to the team, I think a lot of these patients that had concerns about needing to see a doctor are those that are traditionally under a consultant for a number of years. It's important to note that these patients are stable, however, and any that did deteriorate came to see me. So again, look at our service outcomes. We've reduced the number of patients under routine consultant follow-up by 86%. This reduction in time has allowed me to reduce my waiting times, but also allow these hot clinic appointments to review patients who need to see a doctor within 2 weeks. There's a significant cost saving to be had by doing this approach as well, approximately £268 per clinic when you compare a consultant clinic to a nurse or pharmacy-led clinic. We've had really good feedback from our patients. I'll just let you have a quick read of that. And so our next steps, well, I feel that the pharmacy-led service is crucial to how we go forward as a respiratory team, especially post-COVID. So we're looking now to try and develop the business case to ensure that our pharmacy-led service can continue. I'm quite keen now to focus our efforts on the advanced care planning service improvements to improve patient experiences and try to reduce unplanned hospital attendances. As we know, a lot of people end of life do unfortunately bounce back and forth in between hospital. We're expecting, although COVID has delayed this a little bit, NICE approval for these very expensive antifibrotic drugs to be made for a wider cohort of our patients. So we need to be able to deliver these in a cost-effective and effective management, really. And I'm about to experience a new novel post-COVID interstitial lung disease patient cohort. They are now beginning to creep through, and it's important that I can incorporate those into our service in an efficient manner. And again, not all of them need to remain under consultant follow-up. And I am super keen on looking to see how we can adopt this spread within our own respiratory department, because obviously this is just one particular cohort of respiratory patients, but actually within the wider medicine community. I've got a lot of thank yous, but I'll whiz through them. Our ILD MDT team, so Natalie, Jo and Rebecca here at Princess of Wales have been amazing, and they are incredibly innovative and enthusiastic about delivering high quality care. My secretary Rose, who I don't think she knew what hit her when I started and started trying to make all these changes. Wendy, Steph and Katie, our management team here, our physiology team at Princess of Wales and our pharmacy team here. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. And Nicola Zan Hutchinson, who helped develop the physiology led service prior to my arrival. And of course, our patients and their carers who have been on this journey with us. So thank you.